Hey everyone, Moxie here. Today's video is similar to one that I posted last week about minimalism and mental health, but today I'll be discussing the length of my journey in a bit more detail. I started my minimalist journey about 5 years ago in July of 2018. I had watched someone I know get rid of all of their worldly belongings except for what would fit in a backpack and a small box. It was crazy for me to see it happen. And I asked myself, what would I do if I tried something like that? What would I keep? Could I even do it? I looked around at our house and our stuff. Even thinking about doing that seemed intimidating, but I did think about it. I let the anxiety of such a situation wash over me. Since it was hypothetical, I didn't feel real life stress, just anxiety at the thought of it. And it took me a while to realize that I probably would be able to do such a thing, but perhaps not to such an extreme. I realized that day to day I don't use a whole lot, and as long as I have what I use day to day, what more do I really need? And that question sort of got answered a few months later. In October of 2018, we vacationed in Japan. It was my first time back since studying abroad there in 2011, and man, did I miss it. Part of my experience, and by that I mean trauma, of studying abroad was the airline basically lying to us. We had to switch flights last minute from the US to Japan so we could get to Japan on time for orientation. They told us not to worry about our luggage, that they'd forward it to the new flight. As you may expect, they didn't do that. We got to the airport in Japan and our luggage was nowhere to be seen. Me and my two friends, who were also studying abroad, freaked a bit. Airport security gave us a hard time trying to leave because one of my friends only had a personal item with no carry on, and me and my other friend each had a personal item and carry-on, but they were really suspicious that three travelers from the States had such little luggage, and understandably so. It took us a long time to get everything sorted. We eventually found out our luggage had been left behind, which wasn't great, especially for my friend who only had a backpack. And then we had to explain this to airport security, a bunch of teenagers with like moderate Japanese skills who hadn't slept in 30 hours, who were stressed and tired, like explaining all of this to airport security. Seemed a little sussy, right? It wasn't a great entrance into Japan for us. And of course, we were studying abroad for the semester, so we needed a full-size luggage to hold everything we needed for university. Clothes for 3 seasons. It was like sweltering when we got there and winter when we left, so we needed clothes for all of those seasons, books, electronics, other life essentials. It was a lot for 4 to 5 months. And it ended up taking us 3 days to get our luggage that had been left behind in the States. Thankfully, I was okay. I was kind of scared that I'd lose my luggage, so I packed a few days worth of clothes and all of my essentials into my carry-on and personal item. Unfortunately, my friend with the backpack didn't fare so well, and my friend with the carry-on and backpack packed the carry-on last, so it was mostly last-minute items. And I was stressed those 3 days of our luggage missing, so I can't even imagine how they were feeling during that time. And I told myself if I were to ever fly again, I would not take a full-size luggage. And I've stuck to that. When we went back to Japan in 2018. I knew I was only taking a carry-on and personal item. I am not dealing with the stress of potentially losing my luggage again. So on that trip, I traveled with my partner and two friends, and I made the same suggestion to them to only take a carry-on and a personal item if possible. And I told them the nightmare story of what happened when I studied abroad. And 3 days for a 4+ month living situation wasn't the absolute worst at the end of the day, but for 3 days out of a 2-week vacation, that would really suck. So we all did end up deciding to do the same thing. And doing carry-on and personal item only means that our stuff stays with us on our person at all times. It's not going to get lost. So for a Japan vacation, I had to pack my entire life into a carry-on and a backpack for, 2 weeks. It was a little overwhelming as I had never packed so late before and I have anxiety, so I always tended to be a bit of an overpacker to kind of accommodate for that anxiety. But I managed to do it, and we set off on our 2-week Japan adventure, and we had an absolute blast. I didn't feel like I was forgetting or missing anything the entire time. If anything, I actually think I overpacked. We had laundry facilities where we stayed, so doing laundry meant we didn't run out of clothes, so I kind of ended up with extra clothes that I never wore and a few other miscellaneous items that I never used. Lesson learned, we went to Canada in 2019, I packed even lighter, and I still didn't feel like I was missing anything, and now I hardly pack anything. Like, those 2 trips were like eye-opening and game-changing for me in terms of packing. I am such a proficient packer now, which is pretty cool. So yeah, after watching that person unload all of their belongings until they owned just a backpack and a small box, and then vacationing in Japan for 2 weeks with just a carry and a personal item, I realized that I could get rid of stuff, and I probably should. I thought it would make me feel free, so my partner and I set to work. We went room to room decluttering. It was kind of hard at first. We got rid of a lot, but we still had a lot each month. When we went room to room decluttering, we got rid of more each time, and it got easier. I got into a better headspace about the whole thing because I gave myself the time and the space to do that. And I realized I wanted to get rid of even more. I felt like the Kylo Ren meme, right? More, more. And with each trip to the thrift store, I felt lighter and also mind blown that we were getting rid of so much, because how did we even have so much, right? And at this point, I just want to kind of take a little break. For anyone concerned, all of our stuff that we donated was in great shape. We wouldn't have donated stuff that was in crappy shape because it would have just gotten thrown out anyway. Some of our stuff was barely touched. Some of it wasn't even opened. Other stuff was just well maintained. My partner and I take great care of our stuff, which is part of the reason why we had so much stuff. Nothing ever got thrown out because it was well cared for and there was no reason to get rid of it, right? Each month decluttering, so much stuff. I thought in early 2020 that we were nearly done after almost 2 years, and then the thing happened, right? Lockdown happened, and we were suddenly home a lot more, even in the way that introverts go. Lockdown was actually kind of a great test of our progress, though, which is weird to say, but being home all the time except to get groceries once a month was a lot. Like, I enjoy being home, and I did kind of enjoy, like, this little lockdown break, but it was still a lot, and I would rather not do something like that again. But we could, in that time, we could feel that our space was more open than it had ever been, and that was great. But we also took the lockdown, nothing else to do opportunity to declutter even more. We kind of popped off. In just a few months, in mid-2020, we decluttered as much stuff combined as we did the previous 2 years. Like, the amount of stuff we got rid of suddenly doubled in just a few months' time. Now, of course, we couldn't actually get rid of this stuff, or we couldn't actually get it out of the house since everything was closed and nobody was doing donation pickups. So we just had a bunch of crap sitting in our garage for the better part of a year. But still, it was out of our usual living space, and it felt really good. We actually decluttered even more throughout 2020 and just continued to add to the piles that we already had. And let me tell you, in spring 2021, when donation pickups were happening again, it felt amazing to see all of that stuff leave our house. Like, our entire front yard was filled with stuff. It was insanity. Unfortunately, I don't have many pictures of our progress. Like, it's kind of frustrating to me now, but I really didn't think about it back then when all of this was happening. But I wish I could see the side by side now, though, just thinking about what it used to look like. I wish I could just have a visual to really remember, because it was not great. So yeah, after all that stuff was decluttered in 2020 and got removed from our house in 2021, we were feeling even better, and the burden was lightened significantly more, and we were even more motivated to keep going. 2021 was another year of getting rid of mass amounts of stuff. I'd say by the end of 2021, so about 3.5 years after we started this progress, we had gotten rid of at least half of our stuff. At least. It was probably more like 60 or 70%. And I know that's like not a lot compared to what most people can accomplish, and yeah, it took me way longer to get there than most people, but that's just the burden of being mentally ill. Things take longer, plain and simple. I talk about that a lot more in my other video, and I'll just link that below, and I won't get into all of that now. But my mental health is the reason why this took so long. Regardless of that, though, I was making steady progress over all that time, and I'm really happy with where we're at now. We continued to get rid of stuff throughout 2022, which included my old car, which no longer ran. It was literally just taking up space in our garage. It was kind of sad seeing it go, but we got some money for it, and the reclaimed space was awesome, and I feel so lucky that we can be a one-car household too. And during this time, 2022, we were slower and more mindful of decluttering at this point because we were expecting a baby at that point, and it's like just as soon as we were almost done getting rid of all of our excess, we suddenly had to start accumulating stuff again. I really didn't mind, though. We didn't have excess at that point, and I don't think that baby goods, when you have a baby, is excess, right? It's a necessity. And our house was just really comfortable. Everything had breathing room, nothing was cluttered, it stayed clean, it was really nice. Throughout my pregnancy, we slowly accumulated the necessary items for a little one, and it honestly wasn't as bad or as overwhelming as I thought it would be. And plus, I knew a lot of stuff like for the baby was only temporary bassinets, high chairs. We'd use them for a few months, few years, and then be done with them. We don't have to worry about keeping it in our house and maintaining it forever. It's just for that current state of our life. And thanks to all the progress we had made the past 4 years, we had room for everything without it feeling too overwhelming. And it was practically the perfect time for this to happen since we had the space for all that stuff. Even so, we did continue getting rid of stuff until the baby was born in the fall of 2022. And since then, we've actually gotten rid of quite a bit more. And just every time, even now, it astounds me that we still had so much stuff to get rid of. Where does it all come from? Where was it all going? But now, 5 years on, I do actually feel comfortable with our space. There's still stuff I'd like to get rid of, but the absolute excess is gone. I am unburdened and free, and I am never going back. I never had bad buying and spending habits, but they certainly weren't great. I've worked on that a lot these past 5 years, and I can feel and see the progress that I've made. I'm really proud of myself for all the work I've done on myself, for myself, to have a better life. And I'll admit, I still make impulse purchases, but not nearly as often, and I never regret an impulse purchase these days, whereas I did used to regret them quite often, as you would expect. I think part of this is I became extremely mindful of my buying habits, what impulse purchases I had made that I regretted, how could I not regret purchases in the future, and so on. And it was an entire mindset shift that could be honestly an entire video in and of itself, like that shift. But it's definitely been good for me. And I know that our house will never be cluttered again. I spent 5 years decluttering, changing my mindset, working on my mental health, checking in on myself more frequently to ensure that we don't get back to what it was. And it does feel really good. Our lives are much improved with all of the work I've put in, and it makes me feel so grateful. Grateful that we're here now, that I gave myself the space and the time to go at my own pace to make this happen, that we have an exciting future to look forward to that will be unburdened by physical items. And everything is just great, honestly. Making this video has actually helped me reflect on the past 5 years better than I could have normally, so that's really cool. I'm glad for that, and I'm glad that it makes me feel excited for everything that we've accomplished, and it makes me wonder what the next 5 years are going to look like. Like, I can't even imagine, but it's pretty exciting. And you know what, that's gonna do it for today's video. This was pretty personal, so I hope it was okay for y'all. I hope you gleaned some type of value from it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.